Hello BookTube, welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and I would like to share with you today how I did on my 17 and 17 project, or as I called it, Project 17 and 17. That was a reading challenge that I gave to myself in the year 2017, and several of you have asked me how I did and if I met my goals and all that. And then more recently, some of you have been asking me about my new project, which I mentioned in earlier videos, which is called 20 by 20. And I feel like even though I'm super excited to tell you about 20 by 20, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to tell you how I did on 17 and 17, and then in the next video, I'll tell you about 20 by 20. So, I tried filming this yesterday, and I quickly ate up all the space on my phone because it was just too long. I was trying to read every list and tell you all of that, and it's just too long and boring. So I decided to just mainly focus on the series that I finished, but I'll quickly tell you about the lists that I had and how many I read on each list, then not go into detail about what those were. So basically, my overall goal was to read an average of 17 books each month in the year 2017 for a total of 204 books. So you guys know I already told you that I ended up finishing 251 books, so I easily met that goal. And there were months when I didn't make 17. My lowest month that I finished was June, and I only finished 5 books in June because I was reading only big books. I had started a few others, but I didn't finish them until the next month. So, so it averaged anywhere from 5 books a month to 35 books a month, and that's kind of how the year went. I'd say most of the time I probably averaged about 20 books a month, something like that. I don't know. I never actually did the math. Okay, so I had several different lists of 17, and then I had a few lists of categories I was reading that didn't necessarily have 17. So the books that, the book lists that contained 17 were 17 series to finish that I had already started in previous years. Then I had 17 series that were in progress that I wanted to make progress on, but didn't expect to finish them. That's kind of a mouthful, but basically I just call that series in progress. And most of those, or a lot of those, were series that are not even done yet. They're still being written. Then I had 17 cozy mysteries that I wanted to read. I initially made a list of 17 different series I wanted to read from, including starting some, but I ended up just reading 17 cozy mystery books and not from 17 different series. So those were separate. I didn't include any cozy mysteries in my other lists of series. Then I also had a list of 17 series that I wanted to start. And within those, I ended up starting 17, but I also finished or caught up with the current in 7 or 8 of those series. So most of them were trilogies and a couple of duologies, but I also had a couple of others that had more, and I'll go into those in a little bit. Okay, then I also had the top 17 books that my daughter Katie wanted me to read, and then 17 standalone books that I plan to read in print, 17 standalone books that I plan to listen to on audio. I had a goal of reading at least 17 nonfiction books, and I also had a list of 17 classics, then 17 collected authors that I had never read. I'm probably going to do a separate video on that one. Then I also had a goal to read 12 Grace Livingston Hill books. I'd failed at that one. I only read one. So if you remember back at the beginning of the year, I said I was going to try to read one a month, and I didn't do it. So I'm going to tweak that goal just a little bit for my 20 by 20 challenge. Then I had a goal to read at least 17 Newbery winners and 17 rereads, and my goal for big books was to read 30, and I read 36, and then to read at least 17 of the Sunshine State books, both from last year and then from the current year. Okay, so I should have, as I went through, I should have told you how many, so I didn't have to go back through it twice. But anyway, so series to finish, I did finish 17. I actually kind of finished 18 because one of those was grouped. I had 2 series from the same world that I had grouped in one bullet point. So I actually finished 18 series. That was the main list that I was really working hard to finish. That one, and then series in progress. Now, I only read and made progress in 13 of the original 17 that I had on my original list, but I did make progress in 4 other middle grade series that that weren't necessarily a high priority, but I ended up reading more middle grade books during May, and then I remembered some others that I had forgotten about that I ended up reading instead of some of the longer adult books. Then of the series I started, this gets tricky. Of the original list of series I said I was going to start, I only started 9 of those, but I did start a total of 27 series. 15 of them were middle grade or YA books, and 7 of those 15 were Sunshine State books. And 4 of the Sunshine State books I don't have any interest in continuing on. Then I had 3 other adult series that I started, and I think a couple of those I may have finished. So anyway, it all came out to be that I did start a total of 17 series that are still unfinished going into next year. 6 of them I did finish. So anyway, it gets kind of crazy. But anyway, all right. Of the list that Katie wanted me to read, I read 14 of those. And of the standalone print books, I only read 10 of those. And I did read all 17 of the standalone audiobooks. For nonfiction, I ended up reading 21 books. I had kind of given myself some broader categories with nonfiction, like I knew I wanted to read an organizing book and a parenting book and things like that. So I kind of had a basic list going into the year, and I did read from each category within nonfiction. I ended up reading 10 to 15 classics, depending on how you look at it. The reason I say that is because I did read the entire Once and Future King series, if you will. I know that the first 4 books are usually bound together, and then there's the 5th book, the Book of Merlin. I read all 5 of them, so I didn't know whether to count it as 5 books or 2 books. I think on Goodreads I ended up counting it as 3 books because in my audio that I had access to, they were grouped in pairs. I read Sword in the Stone by itself, and then the next 2 were paired together, and then the next 2 were paired together. So if you count that as a whole series, then I read 15 classic books. I read 12 of the collected authors that I've never read, or going into the year, I had about 30 collected authors. And by collected authors, I'm talking about authors that I own 4 or more of their books and have never read a single one. I had carried over 4 from last year that I had said I wanted to read early in 2016. That's what I mean by last year. And so I read all 4 of those, and then another 8 of the authors that I have collected during these last couple of years. So I was happy about that. And the reason I didn't go ahead and push for 17 was because it would have meant starting more series. A lot of the authors I've collected are series books, and I just didn't want to start more series than necessary just to, read those authors. I already mentioned Grace Livingston Hill. Another list I had was Newbery winners. I read 11 Newbery winners or Newbery honor books, or books that are in the same series with a Newbery winner. I had a Goodreads goal. I'm in the Goodreads Newbery group to read the Dark is Rising sequence, and it was one of the challenges, and I didn't finish it. I read 2 of them, and there's still 3 books in the series, so I'm going to have to try to, finish those at some point. But I just had a hard time getting into that series. So I was kind of happy that I at least just got 2 of them read. I had 18 rereads. At first I didn't even think I had 17. And then I went back through my Goodreads, and a couple of those were children's books. Actually, a few of them were, so they weren't difficult. Some of the Newbery winners that I read were rereads, but I did finish 18 of those. I already mentioned that I read 36 big books being 400 pages or more. Now, I know tomes have to be 500 or more according to Tome Topple rules, but there is a big book challenge on Goodreads, and those just need to be 400 or more. And then I read 18 books from the Sunshine State lists. 10 of of them were from the 2016-2017 list, and then I have read 8 from the 2017-2018 list. So I want to finish the rest of the 15 from for this school year next month. That is going to be my main TBR for February, is to finish the Sunshine State books, because I'm just going to read Mysteries in March, and Book Bowl is going to be, I think, the end of March or sometime in March, so I've got to get those read. Okay, so that gives me a grand total of 20 finished series that I had started previously, and then 4 series that are caught up to as many as are written. 3 of those I started and finished this year. One of those I had started a long time ago, and I'm caught up on it. And then I read 7 series start to finish, and those are series that are finished and completed. So it's a total of 31 series, and I can at least check off the list the ones that are completed, and the ones that I'm caught up with. Then I will just, keep an eye out for future books that come up in those series. So quickly, just to make this video a little more interesting, I will show you the series, at least the ones I own, that are on these lists that I have finished, and I'll just go through them quickly. I finished the Earth Children series by Jean M. Auel. And I finished the Shenandoah album series by Emily Richards. I read the most recent book by Fannie Flagg, which happens to be book 4 in the Elmwood Spring series. I thought the Elmwood Spring series was done, and she came out with this book, which was a lot of fun. So not my favorite in the series, but still, of course, because it's Fannie Flagg, I was going to read it. I finished the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. I finished the Love Story duology by Eric Siegel. I finished the No Time for Goodbye duology by Linwood Barclay. I read the last book in the Fair Acre series by Effie Leland Wilder. This is the first one. I am caught up to date with the Joanne Fluke, Hannah Swenson Baking Mysteries. This is the first one, but I'm completely caught up. The next one comes out in February, so I won't be caught up for long. I read the entire 8 books in the Donna Van Leer Christmas Hope series, and I believe there are still more coming out, and so I'm caught up with this one. And then the last one that I'm caught up with, at least that have been translated, is The Cemetery of Forgotten Books by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. More have been written. Elizabeth Tyree and I read the first 3, and those are the only ones that I believe have been translated into English so far. So we're basically caught up with the English version, and so that's exciting. Then for my middle grade and YA books, oh, you know what? I have a few here that I don't have examples of, so let me run through them really quick. These were library books. I also finished the Silo series by Hugh Howey, the Rose Harbor series by Debbie Macomber, the okay. I read Love Mercy by Earlene Fowler, and it says it's the first book in the Love Mercy Johnson series, but it was written several years ago, and there's no other books. So I guess you could say I'm caught up with it. I started it, and I read that book, and I'm caught up with that series. If she ever writes any more in that series, then I'll be ready to go. Okay, then I also read the Cold Sassy Tree duology by Ella Van Burns, and then all 5 of the Once and Future King books by... I never can say the name. Is it White? That's ridiculous that I can't say who that is. Then I read the Christmas Box. I finished the Christmas Box series by Richard Paul Evans, and then I read entirely the Mistletoe Collection by Richard Paul Evans. Then for my YA and middle grade books, I read, I'll go through the ones I have and then go back and fill you in on the ones that I don't have. I finished Harry Potter. And I finished the Selection series by reading The Heir and the Crown. I had to read 4 Harry Potter books to finish Harry Potter this year. I finished the Stung duology by Bethany Wiggins by reading Cured. I reread Love That Dog by Sharon Creech, and then I read Hate That Cat. This is the Jack duology by Sharon Creech. I finished the last 3 in the Wolves of the Beyond series by Catherine Lasky. This is a spin-off series of the Guardians of Ga'Hoole, which I had read in earlier years, and I'm going to pass all of those series onto my great nephew. And then I read the 11th book in the 39 Clues series by Rick Riordan, Peter Larangis, Gordon Corman, and Jude Watson. And then I started the Cahill's versus Vesper series, which is a spinoff series of that. I read the 4th book in the Shiloh series by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor. I read the 5th book in the Peter and the Starcatcher series by Ridley Pearson and Dave Barry. Then I also reread and finished the Neverland books, which are a spin-off series of this series set in the same world. So I had already read 2 of them, and so I reread those and then read the 3rd one. And then I kind of was thinking of this as more of a standalone when I picked it up. But, you know, if you search Anne of Green Gables on Goodreads, you get this as being book 0.5. So I guess this technically counts then as a series book. So I read Before Green Gables by Budge Wilson. This is a prequel to the Anne of Green Gables series, which is by Lucy Maud Montgomery. Then I also read The Rose and the Dagger and the 3 novellas that go with the Wrath and the Dawn duology. I read Isla and Happily Ever After, which finished that trilogy. I read I read the Generations trilogy by Scott Sigler. The first book is Alive. I read the Defy trilogy by Sarah B. Larson. I read everything else that I've already shown you. So that's it. That is what I read for my 17 in 17 project. I had a lot of fun doing it. It really helped keep me motivated and keep me going. I'm a definite list maker, and so I really had a lot of fun going back and checking things off my list. So now I'm all set to tell you about my 20 by 20 stacked reading challenge, and I will do that in probably my next video. So that's all I have for this video. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.